Camera speed.
Sound production.
Sequence
Take
if we
one.
can. This is the opening caption.
This is the My New Norm podcast, and I'm your host, Barry Scott Young.
Oh, boy.
We all have our stories of change and challenges, and it is my hope that these episodes will provide encouragement. Remember to follow, listen, and share with those you know. Well, I want to welcome you to the podcast, and my guest today is an old friend from the 1990s. His name is Sean Azzaro. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Barry. I'm really doing great. It's great to see you.
Man, it's been a while. I am anxious about hearing your story.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, and it's great to reconnect, and I love what you're doing here, so I'm just grateful to be a part.
Awesome. Well, Sean's a husband, a dad, even a grandfather. He's a pastor, author, teacher, musician, and he's also the son of an Irish folk legend. We're going to find out about that in our conversation today. So welcome. Sean, where does your story start? When I think of what I know, it's all about pretty much your 20s on, but I'm not sure you're growing up. What kind of kid were you?
Well, I mean, if you could ask my family members, I was a sweet, delightful child who always tried to do only the right thing, Barry. Of course, you know that. I was a really happy kid. We had a great family culture. I grew up in northern Illinois, outside of Chicago. Grew up on a horse farm. My family played polo, and that's what we did. Wow. My dad was a restaurant owner, owned a couple restaurants / nightclubs in Chicago, but we lived outside of the city on a farm, a place called Barrington. And so we grew up training horses, riding horses. That was just what we did. And it was kind of neat because we as a family spent a lot of time together on that farm.
Yeah.
I think it creates, a lot of times everything's always segmented. Dad's at work here, mom's doing her thing. We had a lot of time together. My dad had to work a lot, and he worked in the city, which is about an hour away. But when he was home, we were working alongside of him, with the farm and with horses and the whole thing. So it was kind of a neat time growing up. My dad saw the potential. He was probably a little more daring and willing to take a risk than most people, because he started my brother and I playing polo at a very early age. Wow. So by the time, we're riding horses at 5, 6, by the time, we're 7, 8 years old, we're playing polo. And it wasn't like there were kid leagues, you didn't go down, to the local polo field. You were playing with grown men. And so my dad actually started a club, a polo club there on our property, and people from all over that area would come, and we'd go to other places. The big national kind of polo center was not far from us in Oak Brook, Illinois. So it was kind of, if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's writings, talking about the idea of the Outliers book, when it came to polo and horses, we kind of were outliers. We just had an opportunity most didn't have, had a time, and then we were in the right location. And so it was just kind of a neat thing. So, we were both two of the up and coming young players in our region. And then, when about the time I graduated high school, my dad had an opportunity to move to San Antonio, Texas. That's where we met, In San Antonio was the whole center of polo had moved from Oak Brook, Illinois to San Antonio, Texas, Retama Polo Center.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And he wanted us to be around all the best players. Not a lot of people knew this. All the best players lived in San Antonio. And he just wanted his boys to have the opportunity to be around that. So he had a business opportunity to come down here, and he did it. And so
did he ever play polo?
Oh, yeah. He played. He was a player. He wasn't a professional. He started as an adult, but he was a very good player. He just loved it, loved the sport. But he also recognized that Mike and I were unusual in that we had started at a really, really
Yeah.
young age. So by the time we're early teenagers, we were becoming pretty proficient polo players.
Right.
And down in Texas, there were more people like that. There were others who had started their kids very young. Some great polo families from this area. And so he wanted us to be around those kind of people. And so we came down here, we lived, we trained horses. And of course, my mom was involved with all that, but she became a born again Christian. And, so we kind of had our feet in two worlds. My dad wasn't really interested in the faith part so much. So we had one foot very much in the church, and then another very much in this polo world. And that was true in Illinois. And then we came down to San Antonio. The same thing was true. We were navigating those two worlds. And of course, that's where you and I met. You met my mom first, because by that time, I had left the sport of polo because I knew from a very early age I was probably going to be going into ministry in some kind. I thought it would be after I got older.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I told you earlier, ministers are old guys like you and me, right?
That's
I
right.
didn't think a young guy back when I'm 17, 18 years old, I'm like, I'm too young.
Yeah.
But the Lord had other ideas. At age 19, I knew it was time to step away, and I did that and kind of changed my major in school, began preparing for ministry. And so that was kind of the time when you came in. By the time I think you met my family, my wife Lauri and I had moved to Southern California, started a youth ministry there, and we ended up not long after that. I mean, we were there for about almost 4 years, 4 years, and then we came back, and that's where I met you at Trinity Church in San Antonio.
Where did playing polo take you? Where did you end up going as far as the different places you played?
Well, we kind of played all over, Barry. Obviously, Northern Illinois, growing up here in Texas. Again, we didn't have to go real far. This was, I mean, literally Retama Polo Center, Northeast San Antonio. Okay, was the center of polo. The U.S. Open was played here. So for the way polo is done is in seasons. So spring and fall, it was here. We did some travel to California. I played California. We did some travel. Florida became a big part after San Antonio kind of leveled off. Florida, West Palm Beach, Florida became kind of the new center. So lots of stuff in Florida, California. I've played other places around the world, Dominican Republic, down in Mexico, different places that you play. But again, Barry, as you know, I stepped out. It was going to be my career, my profession, and it wasn't like, again, because we had started so young, it wasn't like, oh, this is a really risky, thing. This is not like, okay, I'm going to play football or I'm going to play basketball. There's millions of kids competition. There were a handful of kids who started as young as we did, so it was kind of a pretty easy path. But the Lord really, at right around age 19, I knew I need to step out. I had some horses of my own. I sold, had some horses of my dad's that I gave back to him. And again, he wasn't a devout believer. He didn't understand this. He didn't appreciate it. Years later, I found out, he'd never told me this, but I found out, he ultimately told me years later that it was so hard on him because he thought he had given me the very best he could give me. And he felt like I was throwing my life away and throwing this kind of back in his face. It saddens me that he thought that, but I really understood better. I wish you could have told me that back when it was happening. We could have had a real conversation.
Well, when you think of horses, they are incredible. I don't know a lot about them, but what I do know blows me away. Just how someone said it best, horses walk in truth. They can size you up when they see you, and if they don't trust you, they literally turn around and show you their backside because they don't trust you.
Well, I will tell you, it's really interesting that you say that. Horses are just personalities, right? They're an animal. They're the idea that they read people, that they kind of play off of your emotions and feelings is absolutely true. If you have a calming presence, a horse can feel it. If you're comfortable and confident, the horse can feel it. If you're nervous, if you're uncertain, they can feel that too, and it'll directly translate to them.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I've told people is, as I've become a pastor, you deal with lots of different personalities. I draw on my experience as a horseman so often. And it's almost more, it's not like it's like a body of knowledge that I share with someone. It's that you treat every horse differently. Some horses you need to kind of give the crop. You need to give a little bit of whip, a nudge, some spurs, and to get them to go, because they're just going to do as little as possible. Other horses you don't need to do anything with. You're pulling back. They're going to go. They're going to be charging forward, and until you pull back, they're just going to keep charging. Some are timid. Some are bold. It in the same way, you kind of learn as a horseman. You kind of naturally, it's not like you're thinking about it. It's like, okay, this horse needs a nudge. This horse needs more. This horse needs to be calmed down and brought back. And this horse needs a quiet hand. This horse needs, a little kick in the butt. You learn the difference. And it's just like that with people, right? Yeah. You can't treat every person the same. It's in leadership. You can't treat some people, you have to be very gentle and quiet with. Some people you can be more raucous and be a little harder on. Some people need a challenge. Some people need a kick in the butt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it sounds like Tuesday staff meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Tuesday staff
meeting. Crazy. After the polo thing, when you came back to San Antonio, you started walking out the places that you are now, but at such a humble beginning. I mean, as we're talking, I have a memory of visiting you at your house. We walked outside to your office. It was like a gardening building.
Yeah, we called it the shed.
yeah, that's a good one. But you had started kind of really small and humble and just moving out on what you knew.
Well, what we had done, and this is the polo connection is really significant. When I was in Southern California, now I had left polo kind of technically. Lauri and I moved out, take a youth pastorate. My dad moved to Southern Cal, and it was managing a polo club there in Burbank. They had this big equestrian center, and so they had all the horses. You didn't have to own horses. This was a professional league, and they would put together these teams for exhibition polo matches at the Los Angeles Equestrian Center. Well, I got to play on one of those teams. I announced polo games, and I'm a youth pastor now, right? I'm a youth pastor in California, not making a lot of money, but I was making really good money playing in these polo games and announcing these polo games kind of on the side. So it was really helpful, really nice. But what was interesting is I also started this Bible study. And it wasn't me. It was this other guy named Sid DeCraker, who was a magazine publisher there at the Equestrian Center, but he was a crazy, charismatic, fired-up Christian. And when he heard I was a pastor, right, he's like, oh, we're starting a Bible study together. And I'm like, oh, okay, dude, because I didn't know him, but I told him, I said, well, I'll pray about it, thinking that God would surely say, Sean, no, you're too busy. I don't need you. You've got your ministry there with the students. You're fine. The minute I prayed about it, God said, oh, yeah, you're in. You're going to do this.
Wow.
So we did it. Sid made cards that, he was a promoter, throwing them all over Burbank. I'm passing them out to the friends I have there at the polo club. And we have this first night at the polo club, and these people show up. And they're the kind of people I really would have thought not really interested in a Bible study or some church thing.
Right.
Magazine publisher, professional photographers, fashion people. But they had one common thing. They all had horses at this equestrian center. And first course of study that we do, first Bible study we do, I just named it Jesus Christ versus Christianity. I'm really just teaching through the book of Mark, right?
Yeah.
And they're asking questions. They're doing the reading at home. Some of them didn't have a Bible. They went and bought a Bible, bought the wrong kind. It's like, no, I'm sorry, that's a Book of Mormon. You're in the wrong section there. You're going to need but after a few weeks of this, I honestly stopped, and this changed my life and kind of birthed the seeds of our church, for me anyway. I asked these people, I said, I literally stopped in the middle of the teaching. It was not like I planned it and it was on the notes. I said, I got to ask you guys a question. You all obviously want to know about Jesus. You're buying Bibles. You want to know what the Bible says, but none of you are part of a church. And it's Southern California. It's not like there's not a ton of
Right.
really big, well-known churches around.
Right.
Why are you not a part of a church? Why have you not sought this out before? And their answer honestly changed my life. They started telling me how they saw the church as irrelevant to them. The church had different dress codes. It had different topics. A lot of shop talk, lingo that they didn't understand. Music that was from like another part of the country, generations before. All kinds of things. And the truth is, everything they were saying was true about the church I was on staff at, and it wasn't a bad church.
Right.
They just weren't wrong. And as they're talking, I felt like the Lord started talking to me and said, I want you to listen to them. These people want to know about me, but they don't think they can find out about me at my church. What are you going to do about that? And I was kind of ruined for the rest of the study. I fumbled my way through. But it wasn't long after that this idea, this vision for a church for real life became something that God started to work in Lauri's and my heart. And we prayed. I wasn't too long after that, I stepped off of the church staff I was at. I just knew I needed to follow the Lord. And, I started this ministry still in Southern Cal called Real Life Ministries. And it was just, I would do music, I play music, and I would play music and go do worship or concerts, or I would do teaching, just saying some of the things the Lord was teaching, and had part-time jobs, and, just kind of did that. When our daughter Lauren was born, since I was kind of traveling anyway, I didn't have to live there in Southern Cal. We moved back to San Antonio. And so that's where I continued kind of in this journey. I had a group of musicians who were playing music with me, a couple other folks I'd met at different church things, some folks I met through Youth for Christ, and we were doing this Bible study in my home. And there were really 5 core families and a few singles. And we weren't trying to start something. We were just doing this, and kind of all of a sudden one night I started to see, I think this is that church for real life.
So this goes back to early 90s then.
Yeah. But it was probably by this time it's getting closer to maybe mid 90s. Because we just the way the timing went.
Yeah.
We had a few years where we were in this little small group, and we're kind of praying about what should a church look like. And it was March of '98 when we ultimately publicly launched. So we had a several-year process there that we kind of sought that out. But so it was early '90s, yeah. Really, we hadn't really launched the church, but we kind of were beginning to say, I think God, this might be that thing.
Yeah.
Right? That He was talking to me about in that Polo Center in California. And so, we did inner city ministry. We owned a house there. Only recently sold that house a few years back. So we did inner city ministry there. Like I said, I had a band of musicians, and just that community that was kind of there around that just became this little group.
So in the many years of vision and investment, I want you to tell us, where are things now? Are you still working out of a rented office or a shed?
I'm not in the shed anymore. I have graduated beyond the shed.
Okay.
That's a really interesting story in its own right, Barry. River City had our opening launch in March of '98, and we began to grow. Had a couple of neat things along the way where God just moved. We had grown pretty quickly, and we're in this little metal building off of Jones Maltzberger in Thousand Oaks in San Antonio. Met a pastor who he was part of a small church that had kind of been going through a death thing.
Yeah.
And he dropped in on our deal one day. And so we just started become friends, and he invited me to prayer retreat. And long story short, end up getting our elders together. That church merged with us. But as our church grew through things like that, we ended up really needing a place, Barry. And we had grown to pretty good size, over 1,000 in worship on the weekends. And we'd planted a couple of multi-sites to help accommodate that. We were parking off-site. And a friend who was a commercial real estate agent sat down with me and said, hey, you want to look at the Verizon Wireless Amphitheater? Now, if you're in San Antonio, this was owned by Live Nation. It was a 110-acre campus, huge. It's a 20,000 seat, one of your big shed amphitheaters, right?
Oh
And I'm like,
my.
why is the Alamo Dome not available here? Literally, I'm like, okay, all right, let's
Uh,
talk serious. Come on.
yeah,
We were a good sized growing church, but I'm not needing an amphitheater, right?
right.
We go out there now. Interesting part of this, Barry. The amphitheater was on the former grounds of Rotama Polo Center. When
No.
I when I left, when I left Polo, I was playing on Rotama Polo Center, and the actual place where that amphitheater was, and the actual place where that property was literally on the grounds of the Polo Center that I left to follow the
No
Lord ministry.
way.
We get our elders over there, and we're kind of, because again, Tom Petty, James Taylor, all kinds of bands have played here. So we're a little bit like a bunch of goofs because this seems so far beyond us. We're doing selfies and stuff, right?
Right.
Get to the we get on the top of the amphitheater hill, and we go, well, we should pray. And so we circle up and pray, and immediately all of the jokes stop,
Mm.
because it's like the Spirit just falls on us, and it's like, I'm going to do this. And then all of a
Mm-mm.
sudden it was all fun and games, and then it's like, God, are you serious? This is too big. And it's almost like he said, not for me, it isn't.
Wow.
And so, long story short, Barry, and we maybe do this on another podcast, but the Lord worked a incredible series of events that became our home. After a several year
Man.
process, we lost the deal. We got the deal back. He brought the price down even more. It was just this incredible thing that could be only him. And long story short, the very place I left to follow the Lord ministry is now where our ministry calls home.
What's on the property now besides the amphitheater?
Well, the amphitheater's here, but we built,
Okay.
a building, a multi-purpose building with an education wing and with, a worship center. But that's all we built on here. So we're using the concession buildings. We have a pre-K through 12th grade school. We use that for our
Mm.
school office. The other side, we have a feeding ministry called Real Life Community Outreach and Real Life Christian Assistance. And
Hmm.
we are a partner with the San Antonio Food Bank. And so we feed literally thousands of people every week through
Yeah.
one of the concession buildings over there. They do a big drive through. The Lord just over the years has raised up great leaders who have taken up different aspects that they have a call. And,
Yeah.
as long as they are for us, as long as they are within the vision and mission of making disciples and of seeing people follow Jesus. Our mission is more people living real life by passionately following Jesus. As long as they're within that framework, we've got all kinds of ministries happening, and it's
Yeah.
just been an amazing, beautiful thing.
Oh my. What a beautiful story just to see. Hey, you and I are on a journey, and if I were to tell you what you're going to be doing, you wouldn't believe it. Kind of story.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
my.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Well, I know that music has always been part of your life, and you have been gifted with a great radio voice and singing to match. You're a songwriter. Yeah.
And what's funny is the Lord has given me the freedom and the ability to enjoy music and to lead worship
Yeah.
through the all course of our ministry. We've
Yeah.
been able to raise up lots of other worship leaders. So it's like, anything I've ever given God, had to give up for God. He took it and he returned something better in return.
Mm,
No exceptions, and that doesn't mean it wasn't hard.
mm,
When I left Polo, it was hard.
yeah.
When I really kind of said, okay, I don't think the music thing is going to be the main thing, that was very hard.
Yeah.
But yet, the farther I've gone following him, he is so gracious and so faithful, Barry.
Mm,
It's amazing. I've learned to trust him. I've learned to
yeah.
trust him. Doesn't mean it's always easy, but you just go, okay, well, I know the Lord's leading.
Yeah.
Then he's good. He's done crazy, miraculous stuff.
The interesting thing about your story is here you've had this love for music, and later on you find out that your biological dad was known for music. Never knowing him, I would love for you to tell us your story, how you're related to an Irish folk legend and never knew
It's a crazy story, man. Okay, so I'll tell it to you the way it came to me. I was still in Southern California. I had left that church and I was kind of doing the real life ministries things, but I'm also, I was teaching writing lessons up at a stable near where we lived. And one day my mom calls me and she says, are you guys gonna be home this weekend? Well, yeah, but she's in Texas. Now we're in Southern Cal. She's like, I'm flying out to see you. I'm like, why? What's up? I'll tell you when I get there. I can't tell you until I get there.
My. One of
Well,
those.
you remember my mom had gone through cancer
Yeah.
treatment and had gone into remission. So she won't tell. I'm just like, okay, all right. And so it's just very sobering. Just like, oh my gosh, she's coming out here to tell me something. And okay, Lauri and I are praying and it's like, okay, well, I had gone up to teach writing lessons. I was doing this after my daytime stuff in the evening. So I had gone up, I taught, and I come back. Lauri had picked up my mom. This is that weekend. She picked up my mom. I get in the house. They're both red-eyed. They'd been crying,
Oh my.
this whole thing. And so I'm literally like, okay, here it is. She sits me down and she says, I have something to tell you. Okay. And I'm just kind of bracing myself. And she says, your dad is not your natural father. Now, I'm 28 years old when this
You
happened.
didn't know that then.
No, 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 no,
Oh
no.
my.
She says, your dad is not your natural father. Your natural father is a actually very famous Irish folk singer named Liam Clancy of the Clancy brothers and Tommy Makem.
Down the Mississippi to the town of New Orleans.
Liam Clancy was born in Carrick-on-Suir, the youngest of 11 children. As a young man, he dreamed of life on the stage, but there was music in his blood too. Liam played legendary venues such as the White Horse Tavern in New York, and following a performance on the Ed Sullivan television show, became international stars.
You get on the Ed Sullivan show, and your life is twisted around. And everything all happened together. It's such an incredible speed at that stage.
The band played a key role in the 1960s folk revival, reworking traditional ballads for both an international and an Irish audience.
He was just the best ballad singer I'd ever heard in my life. It still is, probably. I don't think I can think of anybody who's a better ballad singer than Liam.
It was a wild kind of revelation. Because honestly, I had this one of the biggest weird things. My family's very Italian family.
Yeah.
My mom's German, but we were raised around my dad's family in Chicago, all this Italian family.
Yeah.
And I had this very Italian identity. Well, turns out I'm not Italian. I tell people all the time. I tell people I used to be Italian.
I used to be.
I'm not kidding. I used to be Italian. So after my mom leaves, it's all good. I want to get in touch with this guy.
Yeah.
So I go to the music store, buy one of his CDs. There's lots of them. Now they're traditional folk by this time. They were very famous. They became famous on the Ed Sullivan show. That's how they became this international sensation. That's how it started for them, the Clancy brothers, and Tommy Makem. So I go buy a couple of the CDs. And there's a little number on one of them. Because again, this is a band that was really big in the 60s and early 70s. And now they're kind of the traditional, traditional music, right? And there's a little number on this thing. So booking agency or a kind of producer or whatever it was. I call the number. And this lady answers. And it's just like, she's just like, hello. I'm expecting some office. That was a label for records. I expect the name of the label. No, hello is what I get. And I go, hi. I didn't know what to say. So I said, I'm trying to get a hold of Liam Clancy. I'm a relative of his. And because I don't know what he's told his family. I don't know anything.
And like they'd never heard that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I'm a relative of his. I'm trying to get a hold of him. And so she was polite, but kind of.
Yeah.
And so, and finally I said, she says, okay, let me take your name. I said, well, he probably wouldn't know me, but he would know my mother. And so I tell her my mother's name. My mother was Virginia, or Ginger is what she went by, and her maiden name. And she pauses. She says, I remember your mother.
Wow.
The the woman I was talking to was Mary Makem. It was Tommy Makem's wife.
Oh my!
And so this office had been closed down, but the number's forwarded to there. It's Mary Makem, and she was this wonderful lady who just was so sweet. And we talked for about an hour. She said, Liam is going to be with a couple of his brothers and your cousin Robbie O'Connell in Palm Springs, hour or so from where I lived.
Yeah.
She said, I can arrange for you guys to meet. And so we did. The day came when he was there, when we're supposed to go meet him at this concert. We were going to watch the concert first and then go back and meet him. But during the concert, my wife is freaking out. Okay, I don't know why, because I'm seeing, they're great Irish musicians, these old guys, but it's great, good acoustic. I love it. It's fun.
Yeah.
My wife is like, that's like you on a stage. The way his humor, the way he talks with people, it's like an older version of you with a thick Irish brogue.
Oh,
That's it. She says his mannerisms, the way he moves his hands. She said, this is so bizarre to see that. So after the concert, we go back. Okay. Mary Makem has supposedly arranged this, but I haven't talked to her since. And I knock on the door, and he answers. And I go, hi, Liam? Yes, I'm Sean Azzaro. Mary Makem told you I'd be going. Oh, yes, Sean. Hi, come on in. I said, my mother says we're related. He goes, yes, you are. Yes, we are. And he brings me and introduces me to his brothers and some of his other people around him, and they're all taking this in stride. They're hitting me on the back. Hey, Sean, welcome. Hey, good to see you. And I'm like, you guys are taking this pretty much. Has this happened before? And they're like, well, a time or two. And that's exactly how the encounter went.
My word.
And so from there, we visited him in Ireland years later, and just he was wonderful. But it was a very unusual way to find out. But what was so cool, Barry, is to see the hand of God even in that. Think about a father I never knew existed, and he was a wonderful musician, incredible storyteller. I mean, his storytelling might be as good or better than his music, and his music was world class, right? And so you stop and think, and he was an agnostic, I ended up one day, I gave him a couple of books and I talked to him about the Lord. I don't know what he ever did with that, but he at least gave it a hearing. But just to think of the Lord using gifts from a father I never knew to equip me for the call that he would have in my life. It's just you see the sovereignty of God. You see the grace and sovereignty of God through whatever circumstance. Well, when you recognize the grace and the goodness of God, you go, it may have been hard, but look how it was good.
Yeah.
Look how God used the difficult thing for good. So, I live with a great degree of gratitude and just kind of awe at the goodness and the amazing presence of God in our lives.
Man. Well, Sean, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I just thought maybe there's a listener that is listening to your story today, and they're not at the place yet in their story where they see the good.
Yeah.
And if you could just speak to that and encourage them to keep going on and trusting him, the Lord has not finished with their story yet.
Yeah. No, that's a great observation, Barry. I think understanding that all things do work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. That's not the same as saying all things are going to be easy, because it's not. It's not. Some of the things that I had to walk through, they were not easy. Yeah. But I look back in retrospect and see how God was working. I see his gifts. And I will say the burdens were lighter because of his presence. If you're that listener Barry's talking about, just know you don't have to walk through this alone. Whatever the hardship is, whatever it is, might be with your work, it might be with your family, might be a marriage thing, I don't know, but God does. And the beauty of being able to reach out to him and say, Lord, meet me in this, trust me, help me to lean on you. And then letting go and allowing him to do his work. And the key is, one of the things that messes up his work, it's usually not other people's doings. It's not my circumstances. It's me. Yeah. It's like when I kick and and try to say, no, I don't want to go into that. I don't want to go through that. When I listen for his voice and do what he says, which is really the essence of discipleship, isn't it, Barry?
Yeah.
Listening for his voice through prayer and the word, and then walking in obedience and letting him lead and guide. It's amazing. It really is. So I think there's comfort, the song "Great Is Thy Faithfulness." I think of the lyric, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. It's not just one or the other. Strength for today, bright hope for tomorrow. And so I encourage you, press into him and receive that strength for today, but also look for and have confidence in the bright hope for tomorrow, because he is always faithful.
Man. Sean, do you mind, could you let us know your website, your podcast, and where your church is for those in the San Antonio area?
Yeah, Barry, our website is reallife.org. Reallife.org. That's for River City Community Church, is the church that we lead, and a wonderful group of folks. We're in Northeast San Antonio, Selma. It's right outside of San Antonio. If you're in the area, the Retama Park racetrack, we're right across Lookout Road from there, and you can't miss the huge concert amphitheater sitting on our property, right?
Yeah.
We'd love to have you. We meet 9:30 and 11 on Sundays, and of course through groups and ministries all throughout the week, all throughout the city. The podcast is called Reaching for Real Life. Reaching for Real Life. I do have a site called reachingforreallife.org. And you can find out about that. But we're on all the major platforms, Reaching for Real Life. If you're listening to Barry's podcast, you heard from my producer and co-host, Baron Wiley, and we just do a weekly podcast. I also have a radio program with KSLR where we share the word regularly every day. And so check it out. If there's any way we can help you, you can email me at pastorshawn@reallife.org. Would love to hear from you, and just love to see if there's any way that any of us here can help you become a follower of Jesus, help you on your journey to real life.
Amazing. Well, Sean, I want to thank you for, like I said, sharing your story. It all kind of started with Real Life Ministries, and today I'm realizing you're the real deal. God has done some beautiful things with your story, and you have really learned the secret of just following him, not trying to figure it out, not even anticipating what it is, but just daily taking a step and just being obedient to him. Thanks for sharing.
Well, thank you, Barry. Thanks for having me on, and I've enjoyed our friendship, enjoy what the Lord's done through you, and how he's used you even to influence and kind of encourage us. So thank you, and thanks for having me on. It's a blessing.
Awesome. Thanks.